Good afternoon. This is Jason Dean back at it again. Hello, everyone in the YouTube universe. If you get a chance, please. It's greatly appreciated if you can like and subscribe to my page. If you like listening to me talk about these movies that I really enjoy, and try to mix things up a little bit by sharing my thoughts on them and talk about how it's related to me and how a lot of these films are big sources of inspiration for me. And this is the last show for the Halloween franchise. I figured I would do. This is my second, more or less, franchise or coverage of a full franchise for the most part. I did one on the entire Friday 13th one about a month ago or so, and that was a blast, and that was a real great learning experience and a lot of fun watching each movie in succession. This one is definitely a little bit different. I did the same thing. I finished up all of the films pretty much back to back for the most part this week. So, and then I also last week I saw the very final installment of the last three movies. I watched that. I went to the theater and saw that. So I've seen them all in order for the most part, and I realized there's definitely ones where I feel are really great that personally just really resonate with me. The other ones are good, but I don't feel as strong with I don't feel as connected to those. So I wanted to kind of just do a show because there's so many. And this whole thing kind of does require some time and effort and whatnot. So and it can be quite a bit of work at times to try to get everything in order and get things lined up. And also, as I'm going, I'm trying to learn about various things around it. So the whole digital format and everything with YouTube. So I decided instead of doing every movie, because I don't, as a franchise, for Halloween, I don't have the connection that I do, say, for Friday the 13th, which I love all the movies and they all mean something to me and they all resonate. So even the ones that are not necessarily that great, they still are really fun. So I feel that like it's a complete kind of thing with the Friday 13th franchise. Halloween, not as much. And there's a lot of films. There's almost probably more to a degree of films in the Halloween catalog that are that exist. So I was like, well, I'm gonna change the idea of doing this and just try to focus on the films that, at face value, I really enjoy and that I have come to love. So the last show, I just put up a video of the Rob Zombie Part Two, which I really like that movie a lot. I actually love that movie. It grew on me. It's grown on me over time, quite a bit, and I just watched the two back to back. His first revamp of Halloween, which I thought was pretty good, but I felt like kind of for me the atmosphere wasn't there, and it was a little bit. I wish. Well, I've talked about it before. I'm a big fan. Like I love slasher films. I love the gore factor, but for me, there's got to be a story. There's got to be really for me. There's got to be about. It's really got to be about the atmosphere. Even if movies don't necessarily have, say, gratuitous amounts of violence, and maybe there's a lot of quick cuts where you don't see, severed heads and people getting ripped apart. But if it has an atmosphere and a pretty good story, and it's got something about it that is truly escapist and it's fun, or it makes me keep guessing as to what's going to happen next. That's what does it for me. Most of the films I cover on my channel, I try to spend time on more obscure films, horror films that were influences on a lot of things that come out now. So I try to go back and I try to focus on the deep cuts of a lot of the old grindhouse horror exploitation films. One of the greatest examples for me, my favorite Italian director, Lucio Fulci, where I've covered quite a few of his films on this channel, and I'll in the future I'll be doing more. For me, like he was one of the greatest. He's my There's so many great Italian directors, in the horror the Italian horror exploitation giallo world. So many. But Lucio Fulci for me is probably my favorite, and it's mainly because of the atmosphere that he creates. It's just it's a when you watch one of his films, not only is it super entertaining as hell, it's you feel like you're being transported to another universe, and there's a lot of detail, considering too the factor that a lot of those films were relatively low budget, and they were also pretty sleazy. They're the grade of acting isn't really that great. The stories are a little bit messy at times, but there's a lot of fun and there's a lot of creativity, and they completely use their imagination. Lucio Fulci completely used his imagination at every turn to create these alternate universes, and these new horrific realities, and the atmosphere in his films is just astounding. So that's the thing I'm sold for. That's what sells me, and the subject matter. Like two of my favorite films. Probably my favorite film of his is House by the Cemetery. Just an amazing film. The New York Ripper is another one of the sleaziest psychosexual movies ever made, and it's just raw, it's gritty, but it just has this atmosphere, and it's a good solid story, and you lose yourself, and it's super entertaining. It doesn't take itself too seriously, like it's fun, but there also are things and aspects of those films, particularly the giallo elements, where there's a sense of mystery, a little bit of intrigue. There's like an investigative element, but in it a lot of the times there is an element where it feels like you're getting these little pieces to a puzzle. So in the case, you're not really getting the typical tropes of what we see in a lot of American horror, where it can be really predictable. And that's the thing that I love about his work and movies that came out at that period. So for me, at the end of the day, it's about the atmosphere and creating a cool vibe. So this brings me to a movie that just came out. David Gordon Green. He's a director who has made. He made a few comedies before he got into the horror realm. I mean, obviously, he's most well known now for his three Halloween movies. Halloween, the one that came out in 2018, and then the one that came out last year, Halloween Kills, and the one that came out this year, Halloween Ends. And those movies are huge as far as the box office goes. Before he was a horror film director, he also, he did comedies. He did, I guess, one I think, with Seth Rogen called The Pineapple Express. He also did music videos, but basically he had never had the experience of making horror films before. And he was hired by Jason Blumhouse Studios, which is like a very, probably the biggest company right now that produces horror films. They're most well known for kind of launching Jordan Peele's career with Get Out, which is an amazing movie. So they've done a lot of great films. I feel like Blumhouse is the biggest kind of entity right now, in Jason Blumhouse. But it's a pretty mixed bag. I think they've done some really great work, but they've also, it's not really all that consistent sometimes. They're responsible for the Purge franchise, which I really, really love. So, it's a pretty mixed bag on some levels, but I think it's great that they're doing lots of newer films. It would be nice to see them doing to kind of go into realms of doing original material. Most of the things that I've seen are basically, remakes or reimaginings or reboots. And that can be cool, but it comes to a point when you're at your 15th or 16th movie that's tied to a franchise. I don't know. It's a little bit a serious fatigue sets in. But to be honest, I've seen I've seen his films, Halloween from 2018, and also Halloween Kills, and it was always a mixed thing for me. There were elements about those films that I liked, and there were concepts that were put on the table and ideas put on the table that I thought were really interesting and really fun. But then I realized too that there's Danny McBride is also involved with these movies. He's also a co-writer, and the studio, I feel like there was lots of rewrites or other people that were brought into the sessions of these of the writing for a lot of these films, and I feel like it does show in a lot of these films. I feel like they tried to make something that essentially is a pretty straightforward narrative around Michael Myers and his tie to Haddonfield, his tie to his family, his ties to his family, and why he kind of is the serial killer that he is. And it's a relatively simple, straightforward story. And I feel in their idea or the newer films, the creators of the newer films, I feel like, particularly on David Gordon Green, they were trying really hard to maybe do something really, really different. And I feel like in most regards, it really backfired. I feel it's kind of more of the same, but and they present some really good ideas. But I feel at the end of the day, like they're not really executed well enough, and it leaves you with more questions. And then they try to bring in lots of characters and people that you have not seen, say, in 40 years, and try to make them a part of the story. And I feel after a while, with all of this stuff going on, it gets really bogged down, and then it kind of goes off track. And plus, what they tend to do, or what David Gordon Green and Danny McBride has done, I think they're very, very talented, and I think he's a very talented director. But I feel they also kind of tie in or try to tie in current social political ideas into the films. And so they try to make, and the films are one of the biggest turnoffs about those films. And again, there are certain things about them that I really, really like, but they're just not followed through. I feel like where there's a conclusion as to why certain things are happening. But at the end of the day, I feel like they're just so serious. They're just so serious, and it doesn't really feel like you're in the season of Halloween. Whereas the other ones that I've done reviews on, they have lots of great and interesting elements, but it generally feels like they have an aspect where they're not taken as seriously, and the general atmosphere feels like you're in the state of Halloween. It feels like you're in that environment, and it's not so serious, and it's not so heavy-handed. It's not trying to necessarily hit you over the head with a some kind of social political message, trying to make it uber serious and very current, and trying to blend in things that we're going through now in the society, trying to blend them into this film and into the story. It just makes it really convoluted and kind of preachy and too serious. But at the same time, I felt like there were some great ideas presented, and I feel like there was, you know, an attempt to do something different. So, and I've tried watching those films. I've seen both of those films quite a few times at this point, giving it more of a chance. And with each viewing, I've had that same reaction where it kind of leaves me in that same state where I just feel like I'd rather put in H2O, Halloween H2O, or Season of the Witch Part 3, because even though they're so different and they're exciting and they're fun rides, and they can go in very different directions and be highly original. Even say Halloween Season of the Witch Part 3, which is completely bonkers crazy, but it's still something. It gives you something totally new, and it's got this fun aspect, and it's a great balance. It's not trying to get you to believe or think something as a viewer. But again, there were things about it that I of both of those films that I liked. So I figured, well, it's Halloween season. I might as well go see Halloween Ends because there are certain little things I read about it across the board from critics and people that I know on social media or people. I don't know anybody personally that has seen it. Maybe a couple, but across the board, it's gotten like horrendously bad reviews. It's when it opened, it made like $40 million at the box office, and then the following weekend, it made like $4 million. It like commercially was a bomb, and this was supposed to be the conclusion following or the conclusion to this newer franchise that was set to this movie was set to be a thing of the a definitive end to the whole franchise. So I think a lot of people had certain expectations as to what was going to happen, especially following Halloween Kills, which is a really incredibly violent movie, and some of the kills are pretty amazing in that film, but it lacks in a lot of other departments. But people, I think, were expecting those kinds of things and wanted it to be something that would try to tie things together. So I went to this film, but generally the consensus was that this film across the board was pretty bad and pretty awful. But there were a couple of things that I read about it where I read a couple of little reviews about the film, and they had indicated that they thought it was flawed, but they thought there were certain things about it that was that gave it this thing of where you were totally thrown like this giant curveball, and you were suddenly put as a viewer and a fan of the franchise. You were totally put into this completely new state, and it went into completely different directions. And one of the reviewers had kind of loosely compared it to Season of the Witch, which is probably my favorite in the entire franchise. And that film has nothing to do with Michael Myers. So I was like, oh, okay, why not? So I did see it. I went last week and I saw it in the theater, and I was kind of shocked and kind of surprised. I think there's elements of the film that are a little bit flawed, um, but at the same time, for me, I almost felt like out of the three movies that this one was the most interesting. I thought I went into this with expectations and thinking of what was around the corner or where the narrative would go, but it literally went off the tracks in some areas, and it went to areas of where I did not expect, and it got away from a lot of the tropes of the franchise or the tropes of particularly around the Halloween franchise. And I feel like what they did was, you know, David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, and there were a few other writers involved. I feel like they actually legitimately took a chance with this film and did something right. They really wanted something to be put out that was, you know, they didn't want to play it safe, and I feel like that's on screen. They really did something different, and they really threw you some curveballs, and in a lot of ways, I feel like that was kind of needed for this franchise. You know, again, I go back to Season of the Witch, and I love that film because it's not taking the Michael Myers story and trying to, you know, continue it and necessarily show you the same things. They took it to this extreme place of where it's an entirely new universe. And I kind of feel that there's similarities with that film with Halloween Ends. It definitely defied any expectations that I had. I thought it was a really unique kind of narrative on the whole story, and it really threw everybody for, you know, I legitimately think it was a giant curveball, and I think it literally was these guys really taking a chance. I think they had pressure and probably restraint from the studio to kind of, on the other films, to try to, you can present these new ideas and go in different directions, but we still gotta like push it back into what people want. And I understand it when it's a franchise, but I feel like with those movies, you can kind of sense that pressure in the films of where they were kind of going in these different directions, but then they had pressure to kind of move it back here. But with this film, I really do feel in some ways that that pressure was probably not there, and they kind of threw caution to the wind, and they legitimately did something different. And again, there are certain things about the film I thought could have been done a little bit better, but I still think about the film. But and overall, I'm looking forward to seeing it again. But I overall feel like they legitimately took a chance. This big Hollywood action movie or horror movie that's tied to this ginormous, an iconic franchise, and it's coming off the heels and the off of Halloween Kills, which was a mega blockbuster commercially, and they totally changed course with this film and did something new. And I think even if the movie say was terrible, which most people are saying that it was, I think that action of what they did, where they legitimately tried something new and give something new to the public. I think even in that extreme or in that situation, they kind of deserve the filmmakers, Danny McBride and David Gordon Green, deserve a lot of respect and props for trying something new. I don't feel the film is as a whole is a piece of shit like most people are saying. I think it's actually a pretty good film in a lot of ways. Certain things, particularly around the ending, I was hoping maybe that it would have been maybe a little bit more tied together and it could have gone in a better direction. But I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting, and I do want to see it again. I've only seen it once, but as a whole, and the concepts and the ideas and what was going on screen, it was completely different. And I remember it was last week. Everybody and their grandmothers was taking a big shit on this movie, and it's an understandable thing. But I think it got to the point of where I almost started wondering, did some of these folks even see this movie? Because it's got that herd mentality of, like, you see a car accident, so you need to stop and slow down and, you know, get your time in with it. And I kind of feel like there's like this psychological thing that happens that everybody has to kind of chime in and add to the misery. I don't know. It's a weird thing, as opposed to just having their own opinion, which they could still think it sucks, but you can kind of do it in a different way, or not thinking you have to do it in, say, the confines of a group to be kind of to a degree of like fitting in with your cool friends and your cool groups on Facebook. I don't know. It's a big facade. Um, but I generally was really surprised by this film, and I look forward to seeing it again. And I generally think, but anyway, I had saw, I know a couple people on Facebook that had commented, and they were basically taking a big dump on the film, like everybody, and I've done that before too. But I generally try to stay away from doing that, because there's a lot of crap, but there's a lot of good movies too. There's tons of crap. I see crap all the time, um, but I made a post or a comment to what one of the people that one of the people that were responding to it and saying how bad it was, and I had said, I was really surprised by this film. I generally felt that they had, I didn't really say in the post that I liked it or that I hated it. I just generally said I kind of based my first reaction saying, well, they definitely tried something different. I think it was definitely original, and I think in the end, after this film has been out for a few years, I think it will probably follow the same trajectory as Halloween 3 Season of the Witch did. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I think this film will probably find a little bit more, will probably have some kind of cult following in the future. And I think in some ways there's a lot of similarities because storyline not so much, but the ambitious nature of it and the idea of trying something totally different, in like the big kind of Hollywood context, which I thought was kind of cool. And at least, I have to see it again. Like I said, I think maybe some things are not really well executed, but it was fresh and it was, right from the and you get I got that sense right from when the film first starts. The credits and the music that they use in the film, the music is incredible, and it's um, unlike and it's anything that's ever been in any of these films. So it kind of sets you up in this place of like, huh. And then the whole beginning, the first 20 minutes of the film is really good, and it's not again it changes it goes in areas that your expectations were not picturing. You were not, you didn't see it coming. So, and I think that's pretty commendable, and pretty. I have like respect for these guys for doing that, even if it wasn't totally done in fully realized or really tied together. It was pretty cool. Like they generally took a really big chance with a ginormous franchise, and it definitely was not the same old shit again. So, but anyway, check out this film. I'm curious to see what you think. If you're a fan of this franchise. Again, I want to thank everybody for their support. This is the last show for the Halloween franchise. So I hope everyone has a great holiday. It's the best holiday around. So cheers, and if you get a chance, please like and subscribe to my channel. Happy Halloween. Peace.